Welcome in ACC baseball fans. Again, back another week. This is Jake McKeever and Monty Taylor talking you through the ACC. We're going to talk about the games from last weekend, preview the tournament upcoming, as well as kind of let you know on our bubble teams. Monty, let's go ahead and jump right into it. UVA sweeps Georgia Tech. Jake got off with 2 home runs on Sunday. How are we feeling as a Virginia fan?
I'm feeling pretty good. They're, they came from behind in both game two and game three to win. So they didn't get off the best starts. On Sunday, they did actually get out to a 3-0 start, but then were behind after that and came back in that game. So just continuing to stay hot, you've got to feel really good about it after sweeps of Louisville and Georgia Tech here to end the season after a slide. You got to feel pretty good heading into the ACC tournament, especially winning the ACC Coastal Division outright with what we thought Duke and Miami it would have been in there, and I think it would have been a share if UVA had lost just one of the Georgia Tech games. So instead, they get that second seed, which is pretty nice in the tournament, because even though they in the conference record they're one game behind Clemson. The division winner gets that number 2 seed over Clemson there. So even though Clemson was the second best record in the conference, Virginia gets the number 2 seed despite being the third best record. So Kyle Teal had a big series as well. He had a big home run to start the series in game 1, and then on Saturday they were tied 5-5. I want to say 6th, 7th inning. He hits another home run, kind of the same area down the right field line, and Virginia goes on to win that game. Kyle Teal, fun fact, all right, he won the ACC batting title with a batting average of .414. Becomes just the 5th ACC catcher to do so, joining these illustrious names: Jason Varitek, Buster Posey, Yasmani Grandal, and Joey Bart, now I believe he's San Francisco Giant as well. So big season from Kyle Teal when he already had first round pedigree.
It's kind of weird to say that he kind of goes under the radar, because it seems like Jake Geloff always hogs the headlines. And from a Virginia standpoint, I mean, this is what they needed the last 2 weeks. They need to go out, handle business. I'm going to go ahead and give them the nickname of the Grim Reaper, because they had 2 teams who were fighting for their tournament lives, and UVA kind of quickly shoved them under the rug. Georgia Tech, we'll kind of get into them. They're going to be an interesting team on the bubble as well. But I think Virginia, they're going to be in that 8 host range. And I think that they have a legitimate argument the way that they played the last 2 weeks.
I think, yeah. So I think Virginia is safe and they're going to host. The question is whether them or Clemson, how both those teams perform in the tournament is going to determine which one's going to get a national seed. I think, because you're not going to give 3 ACC teams a top 8 seed. So it's going to be Wake Forest and then either Clemson or Virginia. And if they kind of do similar, I think the nod has to go to Clemson. But Virginia's right in that conversation again for a top 8 seed, because I think they got punished a little bit more than they probably should have for their little bit of a slide, and their top 25 ranking is actually lower than probably how they're being looked at by the committee. Our top 25 is actually not bad, but I was the other top.
It is a little funny how it ended up working out, because people kind of gave Louisville a lot bigger of a doubt when they were kind of sliding than UVA, and then Louisville just completely fell off the face of the earth.
Right,
and then we'll go ahead and segue that. Florida State takes 2 of 3 from Louisville. They won the last 2 7-4 and 6-2. Cam Smith was right in the middle of it for Florida State. And Louisville, coaching rumors. How does this affect their recruiting the way that they've done? How does the players? How does Christian Knapp draft stock? I mean, this is a lot.
It's funny because you wouldn't expect us to be talking too much about this series right before the tournament, but Louisville is, well, first of all, congratulations, Florida State. I think that was their second ACC series victory of the year. And it's funny because there's no panic in Florida State because they know they're going to be fine. Link Jarrett's a good coach. The only panic there's going to be in Louisville is whether Dan McDonnell is leaving, because I watched his press conference this morning from yesterday, and he, when they ask those questions, whether you've been linked to another program, it's deny, even if you're going, right? And he was like, I expect to be here next season, and then had a whole answer about, basically he's not pleased with the administration and some of the other stuff where they're making public promises to upgrade facilities, and then it's been years and they haven't done anything on what they've said they've done. Because the problem, it's not just the coach having an issue there, it's the coach then goes to recruits selling this, and then he looks like a liar because the administration's not following up on their public promises. So
And they
it's
have
a very
recruited at elite level too. I mean, the amount of D1 draft talent that they've had come through. I mean, even on this team with Eddie King and Jack Payton, again, this is not the conversation that I thought we could be having about Louisville at this point. And Florida State, I mean, credit to them. I mean, we've seen Ole Miss kind of fold the tent, but Lake Jared's got this team ready, and I think the baseball gods are going to remember this series, that they went out and played hard and didn't fold the tent. And
oh yeah.
I think that they have bright things ahead for them. I mean, they are a very, very young team. They got to figure out their pitching a little bit, but I think Cam Smith's going to kind of be the future of them.
Oh yeah. Well, and Jake, your former number one ranked Louisville team was still
We're not going to talk about that.
Was still alive on Saturday. All they needed to do was win that game, and they would have leapt Pitt, because NC State did their job to help Louisville by sweeping Pitt, and Louisville would have snuck in backdoor the ACC tournament. And they just could not get the job done. And it's they again, watching that press conference, they had little nagging injuries to their star players all year, and I think McDonald said that was a big part. They never ever got their stars all locked in together, and offensively just couldn't get the job done. And then they started pressing. And in baseball, you can't try too hard, because
if you have the pressure, and I think they played with a lot of pressure the last month, and it really kind of felt like, I mean, I said it a month ago that it would take biblical proportions for Louisville to miss the tournament, and that's pretty much what happened. I mean, they lost every single game down the stretch.
And if he stays, they're going to be fine. But I honestly think he's probably making these comments to get a little bit of leverage, to get a reaction from the powers that be, because he's been at Louisville 17 years. He doesn't want to leave, but his comment was, "I want to be around people who want to win. Don't say you want to win, show me you want to win." And him being linked with the Alabama job, if there's one thing Alabama does, it pours money into all of its athletic programs.
When that first came out with he was on the very short list for Alabama, I mean, that one kind of struck me odd, because at the time Louisville was ranked decently high, but again, they have completely gone the other way. And it almost kind of reminds me of when Jimbo Fisher left Florida State. Like, he left it kind of disarray. He kind of snuck out at the very end, every kind of unexpected. That's really what it kind of reminds me of. And I think that is a lot bigger talk than what it was, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it until I saw that press conference, and I was like, "Ooh, he is not happy." Because again, normally, even when they're unhappy, they don't normally make it public like that. But he was like, "Hey, I've been."
I mean, Link Jared handled it very, very quietly. I mean, everybody kind of knew it in Omaha, but there was no one asking him questions about it. It was really kind of strange. And then you hinted at it too, but we'll go ahead and jump into the next one. NC State sweeps Pitt. NC State kind of hanging in there. They felt dead to rights. Sit at 34-18, RPI of 26. For reference, last year they ended at 35. So they kind of feel like they're on the right side of the bubble, but at the same time, they really don't. Like, everything about them feels...
Yeah, I'm so confused, because everybody's like on the outside looking in, and I'm looking at their resume, and I'm like, I've got them in. Like, I think I've got them just in, and it's just, I think it's just from last year. They're just like, nope, they're around the same. They're just gonna be out again.
That's the thing that's so weird but then again, they swept Pitt, and we really shouldn't overreact to this, but Pitt took a few games. I mean, they took a game from Wake Forest. They had the nickname Gritzburg. They kind of won ugly.
Took two in Charlottesville from Virginia, who only lost 4 games at home all year, and 2 of them were to Pitt.
And Pitt is definitely out of the tournament regardless. I mean, I think they basically have to. I mean, they would have to win it, and I don't think that they have the talent to win it at all.
Yeah, the ACC tournament is their NCAA tournament. They are here to mess with people's lives like they've been doing all season. I'm sure they're disappointed they couldn't spoil a little bit of NC State's final weekend. So, yeah, they're there to just wreak havoc.
We'll talk more on NC State on the bubble, but we'll move on. Miami took 2 of 3 from Duke. Zach Levinson was really big for Miami, which, again, I think that kind of shows the depth that they have as a lineup. Miami with an RPI of 19. Duke with an RPI of 18. This one felt like a host elimination series.
Yeah, I think it was. I think Duke's going to be a 2 seed, especially with the issues they're having with the potential regionals, because the Durham Bulls will be in town, so they won't be able to use the Durham Athletic Park, and their home facilities are not great. So I think it makes the committee's decision a little bit easier with Miami claiming that series. What impressed me the most is James Talon, who is an absolutely amazing freshman pitcher for Duke. He's got a sub-1 ERA. He's their closer, in the conversation for freshman of the year in the ACC, and Miami was actually able to get him to blow a save on Saturday night. Duke was up 8-3, I believe, going into the bottom of the eighth. The reliever at the time, I can't remember who it was for Duke, gave up some runs, and they brought in Talon to stop the bleeding, and they got Miami was able to scratch across 2 unearned, so his ERA still unaffected. But the fact they were able to tie that game and then send it to the extras and win it, I thought that was the pivotal moment of the series, especially with the night before when Fran Oshel and Talon came in to absolutely shut down Miami in the late innings. The fact that Miami was able to respond the next night against one of the same guys, huge. And then, of course, Miami just pounded them on Sunday to win the series. And it was the first 2 games of that series, though, was just exactly what you wanted from a potential division decider, and in hindsight, a host elimination series.
Just looking at Miami's resume, I know that the Virginia one, a lot of people kind of had them dead to rights. That one will be interesting to see which Miami team we've kind of seen, because we've kind of grown accustomed to Miami just flopping when they kind of get a little bit of credit. And this was really kind of the first time I think that they've played to their potential. They beat a very talented Duke team. And again, I think that I never thought I would say that I was rooting for them to host, but I think that they're definitely going to host over Duke.
I noticed, the 4 of you on the weekend rotation selected. I think you went Wake, right? But AJ and Mark, I think, went Miami. I thought it was interesting that they went that way, because I'm still not sure. I can't trust Miami at all. That pitching staff is just, man. You do have Andrew Walters and at the back end of the bullpen, which helps, but the starting pitching is rough. Especially after Gage Zeal.
I took Miami. Noah took Miami, and then Mark and AJ took Wake.
I had it backwards. Okay, I had it backwards. You took my. Nobody.
I never want to pick the 1 seed.
Everyone's talking Clemson and how hot they are, and so I thought it was interesting that you guys. I would have guessed that 4 people would have chosen 4 different teams. Honestly, the way the ACC is going, but anyway, yeah.
Great segue into the next part. Wake took 2 of 3 from Virginia Tech. They won the first 2, and then Virginia Tech came back. Virginia Tech had leads in all 3 games. And I kind of called this on the upset. It ended up almost kind of coming to fruition. Nick Kurtz ends the year with 21 home runs. Second on his team, Brock Wilkin with 25. Then Rhett Lauder, nearly 100 innings pitched, 12-0, 216 batting average. I think Wake's the number 1 seed. I think they locked it in with the series, regardless of what happens in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, I think they're a little. I know they want that number 1 seed, but they have not been paying attention the last couple of years to that number 1 seed if they want it that bad. Because I know Arkansas fans right now over the weekend, it was really funny to watch them be like, "You better not vote us number 1." But yeah, no. To me, that's why I'm not sure Wake Forest is going to be super concerned with the tournament. They're gonna remain on cruise control, and they might win their pod, but I don't know if they can remain on cruise control through all the way through to winning the championship when other teams are just so red hot right now. But I wanted to give you props because on Thursday you said that Tech was going to take 2 of 3, and you were wrong technically.
But if they just did the starters, I think I would have been right.
The games in the 7th inning, or no, because Hackenberg was doing real again. Hackenberg last 2 series, it looks like the bottom of the 5th or the 5th inning has been his bugaboo. But even then, they led 3-0. They scored 3 runs off Rhett Lauder on Thursday night. And they were looking pretty good. And then they were tied going into the bottom of the 8th, 5-5. And unfortunately weren't able to win that game. And then of course they took care of business on Sunday. So Virginia Tech, I wonder if they can, there's no such thing as moral victories, but I feel like the way they played Wake Forest, that could give them the confidence to help them make a run. They open up the tournament on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Against Boston College, so it's their time to shine. They cannot lose if they want to go to the NCAA tournament. So 4 wins on the bounce is doable. They're
And
in
they
there
went
with
1-1 in their pod last year too, as well. So they definitely need to win
right.
both their games
Yeah,
because they only
the
lost
problem
one
is
last year.
the
And
only
they
team
sit at
the only
12 and
team
17 in the ACC, 44 RPI. I think they're completely out. They would have to win it outright. But
yeah,
again, the way that they hit the ball, like, is not that outrageous of a statement.
right. The biggest thing is just, I mean, I think they can beat Boston College, but the question is, can they beat Clemson? And I'm not sure they can. It's going to be interesting because 11 a.m. start. Who knows how that's, especially when I'm assuming they're all traveling down tomorrow. I don't know what the travel schedule was like, whether they went straight from their series this weekend to Durham or whatnot. But
I
11
think
a.m.
it was
start,
I would almost guarantee they didn't leave because they were in.
it wouldn't make much sense to
Yeah.
go from Winston-Salem back to Blacksburg back to Durham, but
I know, like West Virginia, for example, and Texas A&M, they both stayed and they were pretty close. So I would, but then again, it's really not that far from what Blacksburg
right. That's
is.
the thing is like,
That's the weird part.
Yeah, so we'll see. But 11 a.m. start to everything could be an interesting scenario as well. But yeah, Virginia Tech's got to win them all. But of the bubble teams that are in their position with, and I'm talking of Georgia Tech and Notre Dame, who are in the same boat as Virginia Tech, I believe. They're the ones that I would think are the only ones I think that could make that 4-0 run.
If I were to make a bet on teams that are completely out that are just going to bid steal, I think Virginia Tech has to feel like the best one. I don't know who they're going to pitch when they get into that Final Four if they get that far.
Yeah,
but
they're just going to hope to win 19-15 or something.
Maybe Brody Donay can just like back toss it or something like that. But their lineup is so deep. I mean, Brody Donay bats 7th or 8th for them, and I think he would bat 2 or 3 in a lot of ACC teams. That just shows kind of how deep their lineup is.
Yeah, and I printed an article the other day for Virginia Tech. I've got 3 of their guys in their lineup that are all freshman performers. Brody Donay, Garrett Michelle, and Clay Grady are all studs. Carson DiMartini, I forgot that he was a sophomore, not a junior, so he'll be back next season. So even if Virginia Tech,
I think Hurley's I think their only draft guy.
Yeah, their big draft guy. That's the only one they're gonna really lose in the lineup. Carson Jones, but it depends on where he gets drafted. But I think they're going to be fine if they can get some pitching in the recruiting period.
And this too, it's the most wins that Virginia Tech's ever had in back-to-back years since they joined the ACC. And again, they're going to be even better next year. I mean, they're probably going to be on a very short list of favorites to win it. And you never want to have moral victories, but again, they led in every game. And if you're just saying going by numbers and kind of feel, you have to feel like they won that series, even though they lost the 2 games. Yeah. And again, I think that
especially if we can galvanize them to perform in the ACC tournament.
We'll go ahead and move on. Clemson sweeping North Carolina. Clemson, I think, locked up a top 8. They've won 16 of their last 17 ACC games. North Carolina, with an RPI of 29, I think that they needed to win one of those games. And you and I mentioned it backstage, that the sweep is kind of the only thing that didn't need to happen for them to be in the tournament, and they got swept. Really didn't look competitive in any of the games, and Clemson is just scorching hot. 16 of 17 again against ACC teams.
Yeah, so I want to apologize. I thought Max Carlson was back for UNC. He is not back yet. I guess we're gonna need more than one start, one good start to claim he's back. He pitched for the Tar Heels on Thursday night. Remember, he went 7.2 really good innings against North Carolina State the week prior. Comes out on Thursday night and gets lit up. 6 earned in 3.2 innings. So UNC still needs to figure out that pitching staff because, that's, if he had been back, it's huge. But credit to Clemson. I mean, Caden Grice, man, he Otani'd. I'm going to say Otani'd on Sunday because he homered and then pitched 7.1 innings of 0 earned run baseball. They did. He did give up the one unearned run, but he was just outstanding. He also homered on Thursday, so he is just. I mean, I think he's in the conversation for ACC Player of the Year. I think there's about 5 guys. We can talk about that later, but there, I think that it gets announced tomorrow. But he's in the conversation with the way he's been kind of the ace of that staff, even though he's pitched on Sundays typically. But the fact that he's also their number 3 hitter and just having a monster year. And it's always so fun for me when I see the two-way pitchers homering or having a big offensive day at the same time they're pitching really well.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw Cags pitch when it was Florida A&M, that was another thing. And then actually a new rule that I found out at the Texas West Virginia game, you can have your relief pitcher enter the game and he can stay in as the DH even if he gets yanked. I'd never seen that, and I thought that was completely against the rules.
Yeah, that's why
Texas. So that'll be interesting to see kind of how they play that with their bullpen and stuff like that, because I know Jay Johnson at LSU's talked about it, about using starters, because, again, you're just looking for outs, especially in the ACC tournament. You can get outs any way you need him.
Oh, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. Austin Gordon pitched well for them on Friday in Game 2 as well. So it was, I think you got to be really pleased if you're Clemson. You're staying hot. They've swept like 3 weekends in a row. I can't. They're
insane.
Yeah, so that's going to be Virginia. Like we just talked about, Virginia Tech is in the pod with Clemson. That's going to be the big test, and they will play Clemson second. Virginia Tech will. So it's going to be a fun series. Virginia Tech Clemson plays 7 p.m. on Wednesday. We'll talk more about the pods in a little bit, but yeah, Clemson remains the hottest team in the country. So I was surprised when none of the 4 weekend rotation guys picked Clemson to make that run.
Yeah, I wish I could go back and kind of change that now after this weekend. But we'll jump into the last one before we get into the pods. Boston College took 2 of 3 from Notre Dame. They did it the hard way. They lost Thursday. Had a 1 o'clock game at their home field, and then the nightcap was at Fenway. They took 2 of those. Joe Viterra has kind of been carrying this Boston College lineup with Honeyman out. John West had obviously a night to remember. His dad, who died of LS at 13, and then the ALS game at Fenway Park. 7 innings, career high, 4 hits, 3 runs for him to get the win. I mean, I think this BC squad, they definitely feel a little bit different. I mean, again, Notre Dame kind of had to fight for their tournament lives. They took game 1, and BC showed resilience and bounced back in those 2 games. I think that they're firmly a 2 seed, but again, I think they're going to be a very dangerous 2 seed.
Yeah, we keep waiting for them to just fall off, and they don't quite do it, huh? And Notre Dame, I want to say they had the advantage on Thursday night with, I would imagine, Aiden Tyrell starting for them, and he's been fantastic all year for the Irish. So Notre Dame got exactly what they wanted when they started this, and I was thinking, okay, Notre Dame is making their statement, and then they just couldn't get any of the W's on Saturday, and giving up 3 bombs to Vertano and John West was like. I thought that was a really
just picturesque. Yeah, I mean,
I thought I didn't know about it at the time. Yeah, I thought it was so cool, and seeing that, I was like, man, how can you? It's the Moneyball line. How can you not be romantic about baseball? So, just a really cool thing, and it's always cool to see games at Fenway. Sporting events in general, I love watching. Whether it's the NHL Winter Classic at Fenway, a baseball game at Fenway. I've been there for a soccer game, which was really cool, and it's just an iconic ballpark special, and it was really cool that Notre Dame got to play at Wrigley midweek and then play at Fenway. Cool, yeah, Fenway Saturday, so they got a little spoiled with the big league ballpark, but I thought that was super cool.
And I got to go to that game last year when Virginia Tech played up there. I mean, it's a surreal feeling. I mean, just they take them through a tour before they play in the game. I'm really curious how they did that with the doubleheader, if they kind of got to sneak in, but they get to sign the wall out there at the Green Monster on the inside, and it truly is a one-of-a-kind experience. And I know BC, I think, has had some struggles in it, but, I mean, with Notre Dame playing, I think that they had a record crowd for them, as obviously they don't kind of get out there, and they took it to them, and it's so incredibly hard to sweep somebody, but BC needed a sweep, and they got it.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Yeah, you say BC struggled in the past, but that's because I mean, this is one of the best
That was
baseball
just general,
years
yeah.
in a while. So that probably plays. They probably would have struggled if they weren't very good this year, but they are pretty good, and it looks like they're going to be a 2 seed, unless they do something magical here. But I don't see them getting out of their pod.
And that's a great segue into the pods. They got released. Pool A contains Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Pitt. Pool B contains Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia Tech. Pool C, which I'm kind of nicknaming the group of death, Clemson, BC, Virginia Tech. And then Pool D, Miami, Duke again, and then NC State on that bubble. Let's go ahead and get into it. Who do you think has the toughest pool, and then who do you think has the easiest pool?
Real quick before we get in, I just want to explain how they work. You're trying to win your pool, so you're trying to go 2-0. If all the teams go 1-1, which is a possibility, the higher seed automatically advances. So if Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia Tech all go 1-1, number 2 seed Virginia automatically gets to go on. That's the benefit of being the 2 seed. I agree that the toughest pool is that Clemson, BC, Virginia Tech, but Pool D with Miami, Duke going at it for a 4th time in less than a week. NC State being in there, who just might be hot, who knows? It's going to be a fun time. I cannot wait to be there in person. 15 games in 5-6 days. I'm having trouble sleeping tonight. I'm so excited. So it's going to be a great time for me and anyone watching. The ACC network is carrying every game except for the championship, which will be on ESPN2. So if you're, it's going to be on TV, not just streaming. If you have cable and ACC network, so it's going to be a special week.
And hopefully the graphics guys are a little bit better this year. I had fallen asleep last year, and it ended up showing the NC State. And in the pregame show last year, they were like, "Yeah, NC State's a 2 seed," and then they ended up completely missing the tournaments. So hopefully the graphics. It was just a comedy of errors. Yeah, the schedule you can kind of post online, but again, the weird part about this one is the highest seed gets the benefit of the doubt. Let's go ahead and pick the pools. Pool A. Wake Forest, Notre Dame, Pitt. Who you got coming out of this one?
I think it's got to be Wake Forest, even on.
Yeah, I was going to say this is an easy one.
Although if Notre Dame is able, I mean, Notre Dame is probably going to throw Aiden Tyrell on Wednesday night against Pitt because you just want to get that first win. But I'd be interested to see if they go with their number 2 guy and try to save Tyrell to face Wake Forest. Kind of playing that, that question we'll have when we talk about regionals in a couple weeks, whether you go with that number 1 or number 2 guy to try and get the advantage in game 2. Do you risk game 1?
Wake is going to wait the longest of any teams. They open Thursday at 11 against Pitt, and then Notre Dame at 7. Pitt, Notre Dame at 11 on Wednesday as well in that pod. Again, I think that Notre Dame and Pitt have to win it all, but at the same time, I mean, Wake Forest has been on cruise control, and their cruise control is just the best in the ACC. It's kind of a testament to how deep they are.
Yeah, and I think that cruise control will be okay in the pod. It's going to be whether they can turn it back on for the semifinals or the finals, and then of course a bigger deal: can they turn it back on for the regionals? Because again, at the MLB level, we see it all the time where a team will coast to 100, 105, 108 wins, and then not win the first series of the week of the playoffs. So
Pool B, Virginia as the 2 seed, North Carolina as the 7, Georgia Tech at the 11. Georgia Tech feels on the wrong side of the bubble, like they're way out. They need to make a run. North Carolina feels like the right side of the bubble, but again, with mid-stealing season, I think that they would like to go on a run. And then Virginia obviously playing for that top 8 seed with Clemson. Who do you kind of got coming out of the spot? I think I already know what direction you're going to go with it.
Well, it's tough. It's a little scary because it's hard enough to sweep somebody over a weekend, but now they've got to beat Georgia Tech for a 4th time in less than a week. And Georgia Tech, they are on the wrong side of the bubble. They're probably not a tournament team, but that lineup is very, very good. So you've got to hope that your offense is ready to roll against Georgia Tech for a 4th time in less than a week. I think this is the pod where I think all 3 teams are going to go 1-1, and I think Virginia is going to get the ability to go on because I think I think they're going to drop one to Georgia Tech. It's just a feeling. It's hard to beat a team 4 times in less than a week, and that's what they're being asked to do. And then I think UNC beats Georgia Tech, UVA beats UNC, and then UVA would go on with the highest seed at 1-1.
Yep. Georgia Tech, NC State at 3, which again, subject to rain. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech the next day on Wednesday, and then UNC. So they play the 3 p.m. window every single day. I kind of like Georgia Tech out of this one. I think that they beat Virginia since they played them so much. They've seen them so much. And then UNC, they're kind of quickly sliding the wrong way. And I think that they've kind of shut it off since they went off against NC State. And I could very easily see Georgia Tech kind of in this pod come out of that.
I think they have the best hitting outfield in the country, or not in the country, but in the conference for sure, with DeLeo, Stephen Reed, Despina, and then if you're throwing in Carter Finley as well, who plays the outfield sometimes when he's not DHing. I mean, they've got guys that are all hitting, like 340 plus with 15 plus home runs. So their lineup is very good, very, very good. The pitching and the bullpen is where they've kind of fallen off, and what has kept them from being a tournament team. So I could totally see them winning this pod.
Which again, in these pod kind of situations, where do you throw your ace? And then after that, once you get through it, do you see how they kind of handle it? I mean, the hitting teams always kind of rise to the top in these. Pool C, again, the toughest one. Clemson, BC, Virginia Tech. Clemson, hottest team in the conference, likely hottest team in the country. Top 8 seed with Virginia. BC, kind of in that like 2016 range where they in theory could host, but kind of on the outside looking in. And then Virginia Tech, who went to a super regional last year, brought a ton of guys back, been a little bit disappointing. They're the 10 seed, needed to go on a run and make the tournament. Who do you like coming out of this one?
All of them. Yeah, that's our group of death here. It's so hard to kind of predict this a little bit, because it's hard to go against Clemson when, like I just said, they've swept 3 ACC series in a row. But I'm trying to decide between Clemson and Virginia Tech here off the edge. I think I'm going to go with Tech to stun everybody and actually get a result, because again, Clemson's going to have to beat Tech for a 4th time in 2 weeks, and that's not easy to do either. When you've seen somebody very recently, I think that's where the matchups can be kind of a big deal. Whereas if they played earlier in March or April, it's a little bit different. But when they've played within the last 2-3 weeks and they're playing for a 4th time, I think that's a really big advantage for a team that's has lost a bunch in the past. It's hard to beat a team 4 times.
Virginia Tech, BC will open the tournament, like you said, on Tuesday. Then Clemson, Virginia Tech at 7. And then Friday, they'll open it up again with BC, Clemson. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Clemson. I'm tired of betting against Clemson and being wrong. They're the hottest team in baseball. I think that they continue it rolling. And I think the winner of Pool C is who wins the whole thing. I could talk myself into any of these 3 teams winning it. And then lastly, Pool D, Miami Duke, the rematch. Again, another host. I think if Miami beats Duke, they completely end the host discussion. But if Duke beats Miami and they're both 2-2, and then NC State, the team that always gets screwed by the committee, kind of hanging in there right on the bubble. I'm sure their fans would just want them to go out and win the whole thing so they can just lock in their bid.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a surprise here. I'm going to go with NC State. I'm going to pick NC State out of here, surprising everybody. Cannon Peebles is on a tear. Their lineup really got back to it over Pitt. I think that's going to be a huge advantage. And then they've got some really good starting pitching. And, even Whitaker looked really good against Pitt on Thursday night. They've got Dominique Fritton, Sam Highfill, and Matt Willardson as well. And the question is just the bullpen situation. And one of those, I don't know if they're going to use one of those guys as a fireman if they're trying to get to the weekend, because who starts in a championship scenario, but they won't be thinking about it. I think Dominique Fritton will be coming out of the bullpen, since that's kind of where they've been going on weekends. They've been going Whitaker and then Willardson and then Highfill on Sundays, with Fritton kind of being the fireman out of the bullpen. I imagine both Highfill and Fritton will be available in the first 2 games because they're going to want to win the pod. So I like them to win the pod.
Duke, NC State will open it at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Um, Duke Miami will be Friday at 3, and then Miami NC State will be Thursday at 7. I know I picked Miami to win it on the show, but I really like Duke coming out of this pod after watching them go 2 of 3, and I mean they were competitive in all those games. I really like Duke to kind of even the series here and kind of win this pod. I think that this one will be the one that I think a 2-0. Duke goes 2-0
Well,
because
and
I
that's what I was leaning towards too. With the way Duke has used their pitching staff, I kind of like that in this kind of a tournament where they're both. I mean, the bullpen's going to be. I mean, that's what they use. They're a bullpen team. They don't really have any starters right now because those guys are only pitching 3-4 innings. And then their bullpen is just so good and deep. So I do like them a lot. So I can see why, going Duke. Miami's the team I trust the least. So you can't be too surprised that they would be the third team I would pick.
And then just to recap for the finals, it's just single elimination, 2 games, getting you home. Who do you like out of the pod winners to win the whole thing?
If Clemson gets there, I like them. But yeah, it's funny. I was like, I don't know about Wake Forest winning the ACC tournament. I'm looking at it right now, but I'm like, they could go on cruise control. But I do like of the pod winners I chose, which were Wake Forest, Virginia. I think Virginia Tech and NC State. I like NC State in that scenario to stay hot. Going with a massive upset and making sure they get into the tournament this time. I think that'd be some poetic justice to get that automatic bid and take it out of the committee's hands.
I'm gonna go with the easy one here, Clemson. I think it's just they're too hot right now, and you
Yeah.
always kind of worry about teams peaking too early. I mean, we saw it with South Carolina in April that the best team in April never wins it, but Clemson they almost don't want to take a day off. They just want to keep playing. It seems like.
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be interesting to see where they pitch Caden Grice. Are they gonna stick with the way they've gotten the rotation? Because if so, he's pitching in the semifinals on Saturday. If they go by how they've carried things out, so if they're able to win their pod without using Caden Grice on the mound, all of a sudden you've got your best pitcher ready to go on Saturday. Against I would believe the winner of Pool B if they stick to the way a tournament should be done.
Yes, AD and BC are the
Yeah, that's what I was
setups
gonna
for it.
say. That's how it should be, and I'm glad that's how it is. You never know.
They're not going to
Sometimes,
reseed or anything like
yeah.
that.
Okay. So Clemson would have to take on Virginia, UNC, or Georgia Tech, and I like Caden Grice against in those matchups. So Clemson, if they win their pod and they got Caden Grice, I think you can pencil them into at least the championship game.
Like I said, I think Pool C, whoever comes out of Pool C wins the whole thing.
Yep.
But that's a great transition into the bubble. So there's 14 teams in the league. We can go ahead and kick Florida State, Louisville out. We can kind of kick Pitt out. Of the 11 teams that are really kind of in that bubble mix, how many of them do you think actually make it?
I'm gonna go ahead and say 8. I think 7 is the safe pick, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna manifest NC State getting back in it. So I'm gonna say 8. I think Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, and Georgia Tech are gonna be on the outside looking in. They're not tournament teams, but I think they're very good. It's just you can only have so many ACC schools make it, and those are the 3 casualties.
I think 7. Obviously, the easy ones: Wake Forest, Clemson, Virginia, Miami, Duke, Boston College. And then I think after that, I don't like NC State coming out with Duke and Miami. I think that's going to be a very tough ask for them. Notre Dame, I don't think they have enough offensively to kind of wow a committee. And when you look up and down their stats, I think that their second best hitter hits like 290.
And when they lost to Northwestern midweek,
that was terrible.
their RPI took like a major hit.
Yeah, they sit at an RPI, I wrote it down, RPI of 47, which is a step below everybody else in the ACC. Virginia Tech, I think that it's too little too late for them. They would have to go on a monumental run. And in their pool with their pitching, I do not like them having to use their 2 pitchers that they truly have and then having to basically go bullpen games the last 2. I mean, that's never a recipe for success.
Unless you're
I
Duke.
think, yeah,
Unless you're Duke.
I think Duke's the exception, or A&M. A&M's another one that does it, and I think that they're just a little bit too young too. I think that a lot of their leadership kind of comes from the backside of it as well. But I think BC, and then I think North Carolina, barring something completely unexpected like Houston winning the AAC, somebody
Which
other
is,
than Campbell winning the Big South.
and that's the thing is the conference tournaments can just, it's anybody's game. So there's going to be some bid stealers, I'm sure. So Notre Dame, North Carolina needs to get it together. But I have a question for you. Let's say NC State does win their pod. Is that going to be enough? That's 2 top 20 RPI teams, right?
It kind of depends on what UNC does. If UNC doesn't, I think that they get in over them. If Virginia Tech doesn't, because that's the thing that's so crazy, is we could sit here and have, I don't think Notre Dame pulls through, so I'm not even going to say that. We could have Wake Forest, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and NC State, and all three of those teams. But that's what's so crazy is there's chances to do exclamation points. I think if NC State wins their pod, I think that'll put them in a great position. But again, you don't know if the committee is going to hold it against them because Duke and Miami are both squarely in.
Well, and they just don't like NC State. They'll just be like, "Nice try again, guys."
Yeah,
they'll be like,
they need to just stop messing. They need to just win the conference.
Yeah,
they need to stop messing around.
That's why I said. That's why I'm picking them to win the conference tournament. They're going to win the conference tournament and just take it out of the committee's hands. They'll be like, "Ha! Now we have to cut them."
Well, Monty, I think that's all we have time for. We're going to be live tweeting all this week with the ACC tournament. You're going to be there producing content. We'll probably do a show either Sunday or Monday to kind of talk through the bubble. And if we don't do a bubble show, we'll talk through all the conferences and it'll be part of our bigger conference preview. But I think that's all we have time for. We'll also get out the player of the years this week too as well.
Yep. So yeah, I think the ACC is going to announce theirs. If they've done it in past years, they always kind of announce it the Monday before the tournament. So it'll be interesting to see. Because like I said, there's 5 players that I really like. Jake Geloff is going to be in there. I think him and Yoandy Morales are on the lower end. I think it's really going to come down to Brock Wilken, Mac Horvath, and Caden Grice for that top 3. Those 3 I think are going to be it's going to be really hard to not go with Brock Wilken with the season he's had.
Yeah, I mean, with the 25 home runs. I think that one, the freshman of the year one will be a really talented one too as well.
Yeah, because exactly. So I'm excited to get that email tomorrow from the ACC and see what they've got. So anyway, you can close us out.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. This will be on YouTube as well, so feel free to rush back. Call us out on anything that we get wrong. If Pitt ends up winning the whole thing, just feel free to tweet it at us. See y'all.